Good afternoon, YouTube, and welcome back to the Suburban Proletarian. My name is Greg, and I'd like to apologize right off the bat. First of all, it's not afternoon, it's evening. It's after 7 o'clock at night. My natural light is fading here. Pretty soon all I'll have is artificial light overhead. So if the video quality is not the greatest on this one, I apologize in advance. But this really wasn't a planned video. I just got a shipment today through UPS, and I was so flabbergasted by what's inside this box, I really wanted to talk about it right now. You may be able to tell from looking at it, this is not a watch box. It's not even really a watch strap box. I guess a watch strap could be in there, but it's not a watch strap. It is, in fact, this time a knife. And I'm going to be doing more knife videos. I actually want to get outdoors and maybe start doing some outdoorsy stuff, some bushcrafty videos. And knives aren't going to be the end of it. I'll probably start reviewing some other stuff as well. But tonight it's a knife. As I said, this is an unplanned video. I bought this knife to make a video, but not this one. Kind of like watches, I own more knives probably than I care to admit. And I have a lot of friends who are outdoorsy, who go hunting, who go fishing, who go camping, who own their own knives. Some of them own nicer knives than I do, but I have other friends who have made do for many, many years with no knives that cost more than maybe $25, $30. And I've had the discussion numerous times. I don't own a lot of expensive knives. I own a few higher end knives. And I've had the discussion with people over and over and over again. How could a knife cost $100 or $200 or $300 or $500? And I don't own any $500 knives. I do have a couple higher end ones, but I thought it'd be interesting to make a video showing the difference between a pretty standard run-of-the-mill, good quality, $25, $30 knife and something that costs, I don't know, maybe 5-6 times as much, maybe $150. And I had a couple of good illustrative examples picked out for doing that video, but recently a company came to my attention. This is a Chinese company, and it's largely available through the big Chinese online dealers like Alibaba. Amazon carries a few. I got this one through Amazon, and the company's name is Eafengrow. And I read some good reviews. I've seen some other videos. A couple of the bigger names have done YouTube videos about Eafengrow knives already. But nonetheless, I've seen some positive reviews of these knives, and I thought, well, before I go and make that other video, perhaps I should buy one of these and take a look at it. And honestly, when I opened this box, I was positively shocked at the quality of this knife, or the apparent quality of this knife. Its true quality remains to be seen, because this is going to be an unboxing. I've had it out of the box, but I haven't done a thing to it. I haven't tested it in any way. But it's really, really shocking, and I really wanted to talk about it right now. So let's go over to the tabletop and do that. I'll try to keep it short because I will be reviewing this more in depth sometime in the future, but let's go take a look at it now. Alright guys, so here it is, the Eafengrow EF221. Came in a pretty decent looking box, substantial and fairly hard. And as you can see, it's clearly made in China. And we'll take it out of the box in just a moment, but I wanted to talk about it a little bit before I do so. But Eafengrow was totally unknown to me, at least, until very recently. Now, I do have a lot of experience with Chinese-made knives over the years, and some of them have just been absolutely terrible. Here's a good example of a terrible example of what Chinese branded Chinese cutlery looked like maybe 10-15 years ago. You can see the rivets here were all just sort of hammered over with a ball peen hammer. Everything was just kind of rough cut. This handle looks like it was finished with a belt sander, probably was. Stuff roughly ground out, barely made to work. Blades, just ugly as can be. Soft steel, don't hold an edge. I mean, just terrible, shoddy workmanship. Here's one of the better examples of a Chinese knife from about 10 years ago. This one's a Smith & Wesson, and as I'm sure most of you are well aware, Smith & Wesson knives are made for an American company called Taylor Brands LLC, but they're not made by Smith & Wesson. They're made in China, and they are just awful. I mean, look at how this cutout in the pocket clip is centered around the pivot pin. All of the screws are kind of ugly. You can see how the panels are misaligned. There's all kinds of gaps. Look at this gap between the liner and the handle scale. I mean, it just shows no pride in craftsmanship, no attention to detail. When the blade's closed, and I usually don't worry about this too much, but I know it bothers a lot of people. I mean, look how off-center that blade is in the handle. It's made of thin stock, of some kind of cheap mystery steel that doesn't hold an edge. I mean, this knife I've actually used quite a bit and works fairly well, but it's still a piece of junk. Nowadays, I'm more inclined to carry a quality knife like this Benchmade Griptilian. This is D2 tool steel. This is a really good quality knife and has stood up to an awful lot of abuse. You can see the blade centers up nicely, but you know, the Benchmade Griptilian, even with its sort of cheap plastic injection molded handle scales and only partial liners inside, you can see there it's mostly plastic, the grip frame. This is about $150 knife in D2 tool steel, and it's worth every penny. I mean, this knife works hard. I have used it hard at work. I've used it hard in the woods. I think I may have taken this with me to South Africa, and this knife has just held up to a lot of abuse and is really good. And I mean, light years ahead of a piece of junk like this. So to say that my enthusiasm about the Eafengrow was somewhat tempered would be an understatement. I wasn't really expecting a lot, although I've read good reviews and again seen positive video reviews. So when I opened this box for the first time today, I was absolutely shocked at the quality of this knife. This knife is light years ahead of anything else I've seen from China, brand name or otherwise, and is frankly, I mean, I don't know as an American consumer whether I should be excited about being able to buy a knife like this, or as an American worker who sometimes works in a fabricating shop, whether this should scare me to death, because this knife is impeccable. Like the Benchmade, it purports to be made from D2 tool steel. The machining is utterly impeccable. All of the lines, I mean, anyone who hasn't worked in a machine shop probably won't realize how difficult it is to make this line and get it to end exactly at this fuller cutout, which isn't even, you know, it's narrower at this end than it is at this end. I mean, there's a lot of really complex geometry in this blade. It's flat ground. There's no machine marks in evidence. I mean, look at the flat surface of this Smith & Wesson knife. Look at the crappy tool marks all over this blade. And now look at the Eafengrow. Utterly impeccable. If that's D2 tool steel, that's one of the heftiest hunks of D2 tool steel I've ever seen. And this is a big knife. Make no doubt about it. For comparison, let me see what I have in my pocket. For comparison, here is my Ulster Scout knife. Anyone or camper knife. Anyone who's familiar with pocket knives at all will have a pretty good idea of what the size of that is. So that shows you the Eafengrow is a pretty hefty piece of cutlery, but there's no unsightly gaps. Everything lines up very, very, very precisely. Now this axis lock was clearly copped directly from Benchmade, And the Benchmade axis lock works much more smoothly than on the Eafengrow. The Eafengrow seems to have much stronger springs, and there's a little bit of friction there, which I imagine will wear out over time. One thing you may or may not be able to see is that the pivot in the Eafengrow is a ball bearing pivot. So this is very, very smooth. This knife is, I don't know, it's unsettling how good it is. I look inside, I can't find any machine marks. I can't find any inconsistencies or rough spots. If I found anything on this entire knife that was troubling, it's that where this lanyard hole was pressed into the G10, there was a little bit of lifting of the fiberglass material right here, which isn't, you can't even feel it, but you can notice it when you look at it, just ever so slightly. But I've seen that on, these fibrous materials like G10 are notoriously hard to work with, and I've seen that on, I have a Wayne Goddard clip it with linen micarta handle scales from 20 years ago that was an expensive Japanese-made knife, and it had slight chipping around these holes. So, I mean, this knife is just, I don't know, it's amazing to me. Apparently, it's apparently a very high quality. Now, we will see when the testing begins how long the honeymoon phase lasts. There are a few things I want to do to this. These corners right here are just about 90-degree angles. G10 is resin impregnated fiberglass. It's naturally a quite abrasive material, and this is pretty darn sharp. I think if you worked with this knife a lot, you would either get calluses or cut your fingers on these. So I'm going to round those off a little bit. I mean, just an impressive looking knife. But I haven't gotten to the best part. I purchased this from Amazon. Remember, D2 tool steel. It seems to be absolutely fantastically manufactured. The blade centers up perfectly in the handle. There's absolutely no blade play whatsoever. Smooth roller type bearings in the pivot point. An axis lock which is very secure. And if anything, it's maybe a little harder to disengage than the Benchmade, but I don't know that that's a bad thing. As I said, the Benchmade Griptilian with its injection molded plastic scales and not full liners. It does have a D2 blade, and I'm not trying to bash on the Benchmade at all. It is an absolutely fantastic knife. I absolutely love this knife. But this was $150, or is $150. This knife, when I put it in my shopping cart on Amazon, was $23.95, I believe. By the time I checked out, it had increased in price a bit. It's now $26 and change. But nonetheless, I mean, come on guys, look at this thing. It is just stunning. I mean, there's no machine marks even inside, on surfaces that make absolutely no difference whatsoever. You look at that cutout inside the blade here, and you can see all sorts of roughness where the original blade blank was just stamped out. And there's no really good reason to remove that. That doesn't bear on anything. It doesn't have anything to do with anything. But it's not existent here. I don't know how they can make this knife and ship it halfway around the world for $26 and turn a profit on it. And it's very, very sharp. The edge, which is typical with factory knives, is perfectly ground, but it is too steep. I'm going to have to reprofile this edge a little bit to make it work a little bit nicer, but I mean, that's it. I don't want to drag this out too long. We'll see how it does. All right, guys, back to the bookshelves. Quick update. We're doing a little time warp here before we go back over to the bookshelves. It is, in fact, the next day. I did have a chance to take the knife apart. As you can see here, it still looks like it's made from fairly quality materials. I'm still impressed with the machining on the blade and whatnot. And for the most part, it looks pretty good. I've done a little bit of reprofiling. Well, not really reprofiling, just softening some of the corners on these grip scales. Here you can see one of the little ball bearings that Eafengrow uses, which do in fact make the knife open and close very smoothly. They're nice. But one small defect, which was annoying to me, is the fact that you can see right here, it was completely missing a screw inside. Now, one could make the argument that 3 supports here are probably a bit excessive, but probably unnecessary. But if it's supposed to have a screw there, it should have a screw there. And lest anyone think that it just loosened up and fell out or something before I had a chance to put Loctite on it, keep in mind that these screw heads are buried inside these recesses in the handle scales. So, no, it was never there. Now, I don't think it's going to be too hard to source a little metric screw to fill that in, but I just thought I'd give that update. And this video is already like 18 minutes, so we're going to cut it off there. I don't want to make this any longer. Back to the bookshelves. All right, so there you have it, guys. The Eafengrow EF221 is just an amazing looking knife for the money. Looking knife. I will be putting it through its paces, you can be sure of that. I work primarily as a maintenance man, but I also work in a fabricating shop. My maintenance man duties are at a 600-acre site, so a lot of the time I spend doing groundskeeping, trail maintenance. We've got, I don't know, maybe 400 acres of forest. So my knives get used. I might be breaking down boxes all day long. I might be cutting tons and tons of baler twine. My knives get a workout, and I do usually carry a larger knife like this, and then a smaller knife like the Scout knife you've already seen. I generally keep in my hip pocket. And I have a bunch of different knives in my daily rotation. But I'm pledging from today forward, or, well, I have to disassemble this probably and clean it up a little bit, re-lubricate it, make sure there's no manufacturing debris in there, and reassemble it with some Loctite on the screws, and address some of the cosmetic issues I've already talked about. But in the very near future, I will be putting my normal everyday carry rotation on hold and carrying this knife exclusively to see if it's any good or if it's not. I have a feeling I'm going to like it. I mean, I usually have a pretty good sense about these things. So we'll see how it works out. I will be reviewing this and talking about it more extensively in an upcoming video, and I'll certainly be reviewing it again once I've got a chance to use it. And I'm imagining that unless the honeymoon period ends really quickly and I decide that no, this isn't D2 tool steel, or no, it wasn't heat treated properly, or something breaks, I have some sort of catastrophic failure, and the honeymoon's over very quickly, I imagine that this will be appearing in some of my upcoming outdoors, maybe bushcraft type videos, camping videos. So look for it there. If you enjoyed this video, please go ahead and click the like button down below. If you hated it, click the dislike button. You won't hurt my feelings, and of course I want to generate content that you guys are interested in seeing, so it helps me to know whether or not you like what I'm doing here. But if you did enjoy this video and you'd like to see more content like this, please consider subscribing to my channel. It doesn't cost a dime. It takes one click of your mouse or a poke at your screen to do so, and you, of course, you can unsubscribe at any time. As a matter of fact, if I start turning out terrible junk, you should unsubscribe. I'm here to produce good content, and if I stop doing that, I have no place here on YouTube. There's too much garbage here already. If you have friends that you think might be interested in seeing my videos, please feel free to share my videos on social media or tell your friends. And when I make my next video and post it here, I hope to see all of you here again next time. Later, guys.